I'm Lisa Federico, and this is Inside Northwest Columbus. After spending decades in corporate marketing, I traded boardrooms for backyards because the best stories are happening right here at home. Every week, you'll meet entrepreneurs, creatives, and everyday neighbors doing extraordinary things across Worthington and Northwest Columbus. So let's jump into this week's conversation. Welcome to this edition of Inside Northwest Columbus, where I am featuring Alexa Gino with the Maison Voyage travel concierge service. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
This month, we are covering health and wellness. However, this is the time of year when everyone starts thinking about travel plans for 2026. So I wanted to make sure to have Alexa on the show because she's got a lot of great information. And let's get right to it.
Sure.
So I want to talk first about how you got into travel, because what you do is very special. You are not a typical travel agent. You don't just book, airline reservations. You really book experiences. And I want to know how you got into it.
Sure. Yeah. I think when most people think about travel agents or travel advisors, they think about what they saw in the movies and that you go into a brick and mortar office and they hand you a folder that has all of your travel plans in it and you're buying pre-made travel packages. And to some extent, those still do exist. And travel, brick and mortar travel agencies still exist and they operate in their own way. I have always loved to travel, and I think that's true of a lot of travel agents and travel advisors. And I realized that finding ways to more intimately experience a destination was igniting something within me that I wasn't getting anywhere else in my life. And one important decision that a consideration that travel advisors or travel advisors to be need to think about is that planning travel for yourself is a lot different than planning travel for someone else. And I had always been planning travel for myself, but then as I got my feet wet into the travel industry and was planning experiences for people, I realized that, one, I was actually really good at it, but that I really enjoyed doing it and that I enjoyed the relationship that I was nurturing and fostering with each of my clients and their experiences, and that I was given an opportunity to travel vicariously through them. And so I get to go to all of these places. And so if I was able to send my passport with them, my passport would be full with all my clients and all the things that they've gotten to do. But it's my lifeblood, and it gives me a joy and a passion like no other. And I do feel that for the most part, there are a lot of people now that don't realize that travel advisors still exist. A common question that you'll see on social media or that you'll hear people talk about, people still use travel agents, travel agents still exist, and they do. And there are a lot of us, but you really need to be seeking out that kind of assistance in order to, want to work with a travel advisor, to want to collaborate with one, because it is, and it should be, a collaborative relationship.
Right. And I get that some people, the way they like to travel is maybe just to rent a house somewhere and then they don't do anything. Mm-hmm. They just stay at the house. But there are other people who really want to experience, a new country, a new city, a new what have you. They want that experience. And that is something that it's very difficult to do on your own.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about some of the things, some of the nightmare stories, that can happen if you're not using somebody to help you. The logistics alone, can blow your mind.
The logistics can definitely be incredibly overwhelming because when you're going to a place that you've never been before, especially if that's another country or another continent, a place that has its own rules, its own laws, its own culture, its own flow, you need to start considering everything that you're taking for granted in your own daily life and how that might be different in that country. So even, for example, Japan has a number of rules about certain medications that they control that we don't control here. So one of the largest issues that they have with medications is for ADHD medications. And so that's a normal thing here, but in some cases, it can be prohibited to bring those medications into Japan. So it's like, okay, well, if you need that medication for your daily life, consider that and do that research. And people don't think about medications because they assume like, oh, well, I have a note from a doctor. I should be able to bring that in. And some countries are very strict about what you can bring in.
And that can ruin your whole vacation.
If you're not able to bring that in. And so taking those things as regarding accessibility into consideration, but then you're also taking in local laws, local taxes, where the location is for things. And I think as Americans, there are a lot of younger travelers. And when I say younger, I don't mean age, but just in terms of experience. So newer travelers, younger travelers who don't consider that even transportation around certain places is not going to be the same as it is here. So like, oh, a lot of my American travelers will say, oh, we can just rent a car. Well, if in some places, finding parking is half the battle. You're driving on, the different side of the road, or you are driving on one-way lanes that you have to share with other cars, and you have to figure out how to fit yourself. And so you have a bus coming towards you, and you're in this tiny little, car, and you have to try to figure out how to maneuver around each other. And that alone that stresses me out. I'm not going to rent a car.
Right. Well, and in some places where, like, let's say you have 6 people in your party, it's very difficult to rent a vehicle that big to be able to accommodate.
Yeah, we're not seeing Yukons and Tahoes and Suburbans in France. So
Italy.
You're not seeing those there. And so you have to consider that. So for larger groups, sometimes it makes sense to hire private transportation. And that the cost of that sometimes can be intimidating to travelers who want to do everything by car. It's not to say that it's impossible to do certain destinations by car, but that's another consideration. Even hotel locations and hotel reviews, and when you're using sites like Expedia or Kayak or Booking.com or Hotels.com, understanding their inventory and how their websites work. And these consolidators will often put rooms that are harder to sell from these hotels on their websites. And you can stay at that hotel and it'll be a less expensive experience, but it may not be the experience you're looking for. Your room could be drafty. Your room may not be updated yet if the hotel's going through a refurbishment. Yeah, next to the supply closet, just a really thin wall room. These are things to take into consideration. And truthfully, there are travelers that don't necessarily, those things are not, what is the word I'm looking for? Those things are not deal breakers for them. And so they're like, you know what? The hotel doesn't really matter to me. I'm more focused on the experience. I'm not going to be spending a lot of time in the hotel. And I think that that's a completely valid thing. Not every single traveler is aligned to work with a travel advisor because of the way they like to travel. And it doesn't mean that if they don't work with a travel advisor that they're traveling incorrectly. Right. Just means that this type of traveler that I work with, which we'll get into, has to be aligned with the kind of service level that I will be providing or that another travel advisor may provide in their own way.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that because you are very different than other travel agents. Talk about the difference because I feel like your skill level and what you bring to the table is so valuable and saves people so much time and energy and reduces risk. But I don't know that a lot of people understand the difference between a concierge travel advisor like yourself versus maybe a traditional travel agent.
Sure. So one of the things that not a lot of travelers realize is that most travel advisors, travel agents are independent contractors. So that being said, we have the decision-making power to be able to run our businesses how we choose. We're not limited or governed by a higher organization or agency that determines, other than ethics, how we run our business and the services that we provide. So if you're wanting to use a travel advisor, it's important to consider that every agent is going to do things a little bit differently. So there are some agents that do airfare. There are some agents that will not touch air. There are some agents that will handle, your day-to-day experiences and the smaller things. And there's some agents that don't do that. And that doesn't make one agent better or worse than another. It just depends on what you're looking for when you're shopping around for that advisor and what you feel like will bring you the most benefit to your travel experience. So in my business, when I call myself a travel concierge and a travel advisor, I do very, very thorough consultations with my clients. And so when I have a client that sets up a potential client that sets up a meeting with me for a new travel consultation, or even if it's a repeat client, I do at least a consultation of an hour. And it seems like a long time to be on the phone with somebody, especially if you hate being on the phone. But I ask a lot of questions that you may not think about. I try to start creating and outlining the blueprint of your trip and what it could look like. And sometimes we'll talk about ideas of what I'm envisioning based on the things that you're saying, the requests you have about your trip, the feelings that you want to have from your trip. I work best with clients who want to come home as storytellers, who want more than just going to the destination and checking off all the tourist attractions and then coming home and getting to say that they went to Champs-Élysées, that they went to Arc de Triomphe, that they went to the Eiffel Tower, but that they got a personalized tour through the Louvre with their family. There are kid-focused tours through the Louvre for families that are traveling with kids, which not a lot of people realize. You're still going to see all the highlights in the Louvre, but now you don't have to worry about your young kids being bored to tears learning about art history if they don't care. Right. Or, we can set up lessons with a geisha in Japan. And so these are unique experiences that I leverage with my contacts that I have in all of these destinations to provide very, very unique experiences. I'll have clients that are new to a destination. And of course, we're going to let you go to the, or not even let you, but we're going to craft experiences so that you can go to these tourist attractions, because that's part of the fun of being able to go to those places. But I encourage all of my travelers to set aside time for more immersion in that destination so that you can really experience it, so that you can be an observer and that you can be a participant. So if you're in Paris, one of the easiest things to do is sit in a cafe and people watch. And the Parisians, the French, but the Parisians mostly with their cafe culture will be at cafes for like 3 hours at a time. And for us, that seems absurd that you wouldn't want to sit at Panera for 3 hours if you didn't have to.
No.
But they're sitting and they're watching and they're taking it in and they're being present. And I think that in our culture, with how fast-paced everything is, that is a really hard thing to do unless you're intentionally trying to do it. So I encourage my travelers to be intentional, and we set up time and experiences in their itinerary in order for them to do so. With their itineraries themselves, they're very robust. And so when it comes to my travelers, there is nothing that I will not do to make sure that the logistics of your trip continue to remain smooth and that you feel that you have the support that you need to be able to make that happen. In one extreme case, I had a single mother who was traveling with her 7-year-old daughter, and the mom suddenly got very, very sick and bedridden and couldn't get out of bed. So there was no way to get her daughter food, and the mom needed medical attention. I called a house doctor for them to come to where they were staying, get her medication she needed, and then also handled getting food deliveries and activity deliveries for her daughter in the background so that she wasn't bored and just stuck doing nothing. Yeah. So my clients end up becoming like close friends because I encourage you, tell me what it is that's going on. Share your pictures with me as you're traveling. You don't call me just because something's going wrong. I want to know about everything that's going right and what you're experiencing and the changes you feel within you. And you'll learn lessons traveling that you will maybe not realize until you come home. And then you're like, oh, I actually kind of miss being present with everyone and no phones at the table. Or I really miss being able to just talk to locals and spur up conversation and see what I can learn from other people who I exist at the same time as. So it's really for intentional, immersive experiences. And I take my skill set, but I also take pride in serving other people, that we will take on together and collaborate together what makes sense to be able to make this trip happen in the way that you're envisioning it and exceed those expectations.
We're taking just a quick break, but before we jump back in, I want to give you a sneak peek at what's coming this February. Our Love Local issue is all about celebrating the businesses, makers, and service providers who add real value to life here in Northwest Columbus, in the people who make this community feel like home. On the podcast, we're sitting down with passion-driven owners who are doing business differently and pouring heart back into our neighborhoods. You'll walk away with new favorites, fresh perspectives, and a whole lot of pride for where we live. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget to grab your free digital copy of the magazine. You'll find the link in the show notes below. And, I think a lot of people, if you would ask them, what is your bucket list dream vacation? I don't think a lot of people realize that they could have a fully immersive experience that isn't typical.
Yeah.
You know, whether it is meeting with a chef or maybe it's meeting with a genealogist at a certain location and a combination of things. That's what people pay you for, is the expertise in putting together these unique trips that are just highly, highly specialized.
Yeah.
And it seems like one of the biggest values you bring to the table is that you reduce the risk for the traveler immensely. It's not just about, can this person book hotel reservations?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're really crafting and curating an entire experience, whether it's for an individual or a family. And there's a cost to that.
Yep, there is a cost to that. And so there are with a statistic provided by the American Society of Travel Advisors, most professional travel advisors are charging some sort of service fee. And there is a lot of discussion online by the clients, not necessarily by the advisors and the agents, about how travel agents should be free because we receive a commission or we do all this. What I like to explain to my travelers is that the fee does a number of things. The first thing is that we are now both mutually invested in the process. This is no longer a service that you're just receiving for free. This is a collaborative professional working relationship that you've hired someone to work on. It's the same way that you pay someone to do your taxes, the same way that you pay a lawyer, the same way that you pay your hairdresser. Regardless if they receive a commission, which, a hairdresser wouldn't, but whatever position that you're working on, you pay to go see the doctor, even though they may be getting money back from insurance. You're paying for services everywhere. Even when you book an Airbnb and you look at the last page and you look at all those fees, they're charging you a service fee. And you're booking the hotel yourself, or you're booking the room yourself and the house yourself. So you're paying the advisor, you're paying me upfront to work on this trip with you. You're more mutually invested. It's a professional, respectful, collaborative relationship. Additionally, with that service fee, I now am able to show you things that may be a good fit for you that may not pay me. If I was commission only, I'm usually limited to only showing you options that pay me commission. So if there's a hotel or there's a very, very immersive inn in a small town in Spain, I'm thinking about this because this is a real example from a client I just had that came back, that does not work with travel advisors, but is exactly what you're looking for as far as cultural immersion or just experiencing something unique. I can show you that because I'm not worried about my bottom line, so to speak. That does not mean that travel advisors that do not charge fees are doing anything sneaky or behind your back.
Sure.
There are plenty of excellent agents that fees are just not a part of their model, but their service level or the type of trips that they're planning also looks a lot different from what I'm doing. And because I provide a very high touch concierge level of service, those fees have to match that level of service so that everything is congruent with each other. It's all in line and it's symbiotic and it makes sense for what you're receiving.
And two, instead of just going to Google, like for example, I've been watching this movie about Iceland and this volcano that erupted, okay? But if I wanted to meet with a volcanologist in Iceland, right, that is something that I could go to Google, I suppose, and look that up.
Sure.
But you have so many other better contacts and could make so many other types of inquiries. We're really paying for your expertise in pulling all of this together.
Yep. I have a family that's going to be traveling to Peru in March, and they're really big historians. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they requested was being able to be led, have their private tour of Machu Picchu be led by a professor. And I did them one better. I found a world expert on citadels that will be leading their tour, a private tour for their family of Machu Picchu. So that's going to be an incredible experience. And I've been to Machu Picchu, and I know that it was an incredible experience. And I didn't have a private tour, but they will. And all of the other experiences that we've crafted to them have all been private, but they've all been customized to exactly what that family is looking for, how they want to experience Peru. So they'll be going to Lima, they'll be going to Cusco and Machu Picchu, and they'll also be going to the Amazon. And when they stay in the Amazon, they're staying in a tree house in the Amazon. It still has, it's still ventilated and it's still fine, but right outside of their tree house, because there are monkeys that are out there and it's safe for them, but there's wildlife and they are completely immersed in the Amazon rainforest, which is super cool. But when I have somebody that mentions an interest, when I have a client that mentions an interest, they're like, we have Irish heritage. We want to go to Ireland and Scotland. We would like to meet with a genealogist. I can do that. And it's very easy for me, very directly, to make sure that not only are you matched with the kind of genealogist that has the information about what you want, because there's plenty of subspecialties in genealogy, but also that you meet with someone that is vetted and that knows what they're talking about and provides the kind of service or information that you are looking for. And that is true for meeting with a professor, a historian, a genealogist, an athlete. I can set up private soccer sessions with Olympian athletes in Athens, and that's super cool. So there's really nothing that's off the table. So I encourage my clients during this consultation, which is why it's so long, tell me the things that you think would be super cool that you would want to do.
You're kind of like the dream maker.
Yeah. I bring it all, and I tell my clients that there's nothing that's off the table. You'll be the one that says no, but I can usually make almost anything happen.
That's fantastic. And when we do our own travel arrangements, it's a huge pain.
Yeah.
I'm just speaking from an experience, and I'm just talking about like flight arrangements and maybe car rental.
Going from here to Florida.
Yeah. And then if something goes wrong, right, then I got to deal with whatever that is, right? But when you hire a professional like yourself, you're really partnering with somebody who can take over.
Yep.
So if there is an issue, and I know you've had, stuff comes up when you travel.
Yep.
It's so great to have somebody like yourself to be able to take care of whatever that is.
You have one point of contact now. So if you plan your travel arrangements, you're calling the hotel, you're calling the airline if your flights are impacted, you're calling the rental car company, you're calling your travel insurance, because you should always be traveling with travel insurance. But you are making all of those calls and now taking time out of your vacation to handle all of those things on your own. And for most people, hearing that and considering the comparison of being able to contact just one person who will handle it all very swiftly and expeditiously already demonstrates the value of using a travel advisor. And a good travel advisor is going to emphasize that for you, that they are there to support you. They are there to craft logistics, and it's a collaborative relationship, but also that it's a supportive environment. So when I have my clients who, they're like, oh, a transfer that we set up didn't show up, I'm calling them. And when my clients are traveling, I'm available 24/7. It does not matter the time difference. So when my client was in Japan recently, there was a 13-hour difference, and I was awake whenever she needed me, and I leave my phone on all night because the time difference is not my problem. I work with it because my clients have hired me to be available. And if anything came up, and one time something did when they were in a very small town in Japan, I was available to help them swiftly to make sure that those, that what they needed was able to happen. So to be able to have somebody on call like that for you is a luxury, but it's a luxury that a lot of people are pricing themselves out of, that they think that this costs a lot, or that it's something that could never work for them, or maybe it's a little bit too fancy for what they envisioned for their trip. But it really is such a valuable resource. Whether a client is working with me or they're working with another esteemed advisor, you want support. You need support to salvage your vacation, because we know in this country, most people don't get as much PTO as they wish they did. And so if you're using precious PTO hours, you want to be able to maximize that time as much as possible.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before about the difference between going on vacation and being on vacation.
Yeah.
And having somebody that, you don't have to worry that something is not going to work out. You've got somebody to call. That to me is just worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, you can go on vacation, and you can go to the place, you can go to the resort, you can go there, buy the t-shirt, come home. Or you can be on vacation and you're immersing yourselves in these unique experiences. And I pose this question for my clients. What would it be like to experience France made for you? What would it be like to experience Italy made for you, Japan made for you, Iceland, in New York City made for you? And people don't consider that because they're like, well, I'm going there and I'm being the tourist. But how do we really shrink and make that world a little bit smaller for you to experience it the way that you want to experience it and get out of the trip what you want to experience? And that is possible. And knowing that that is a possibility opens a lot of doors for people to be creative and start really digging deep down into like, well, I kind of always wanted to do this, and I've always wanted to meet a Rockette. So we can do that. That's pretty easy. You can meet a Rockette. You can go backstage. You can have a backstage tour at Radio City Music Hall. You can go to the Jimmy Fallon show. That is harder for me to arrange, but it's, something that we can prep.
Doable.
It is doable if you want to go to the Jimmy Fallon show. Those tickets are free. They always are free. Same thing for Jimmy Kimmel and, whatever. Right. But we can set those things up for you. And so next time that you're traveling, consider, how could I make this trip a little bit more personalized? Even if you're doing it on your own. And you can do your research. And if you're not finding anything, I implore you to reach out to a travel advisor and see, and shop around and find one that you feel like really resonates with you. The same way that sometimes we go to a nail tech and we're like, I don't really know if, this isn't really my vibe and everything. They're providing the service, but I kind of want a little bit more out of it. I love my nail tech. I love making appointments with Sydney. She's amazing. But you go to a doctor and you're like, I don't feel like this doctor hears me. It's the same thing with the travel advisor. You want that travel advisor to hear you. You want them to be able to provide the service that you're looking for. And you want it to be a match, because when it's a match, that relationship will continue to flourish. And what you're able to accomplish in your travel is limitless.
Well, and look, if you've got a set budget, that's the great thing about working with you, is you can work within all these constraints.
Yep.
But we're really paying for your expertise in pulling together whatever this dream is.
Yep.
And I think some people think that that's out of reach, but I don't think it is.
No, it's not. If somebody has a budget that seems a little tight, then we have a conversation about setting expectations about what is actually able to be accomplished. But it doesn't mean that that trip is a total wash.
Right. And maybe we don't rule out, maybe, because of your insider perspective, right? You can tell people, hey, you're not going to be able to go to this destination for less than X.
Yep.
But why don't you think about Y and Z, right? Could be something very close to what they're looking for.
Sometimes a happy medium, if somebody wants to go to, because people really love the idea of being able to travel through multiple European countries in a few weeks. Sometimes a happy medium for budget is being able to do a European or a Mediterranean cruise, because the cost per person is a lot less than what it was if we are, handling your transportation and your flights and accommodations and everything between cities, between countries, handling those logistics and how to split your time. But it's a good introduction to Europe to do a Mediterranean cruise and be able to figure out where you want to focus your time next time you go there. Be like, okay, well, we know we didn't really like Barcelona, but we really liked Rome. So we would like to spend more time in Italy and focus on Southern Italy next time. It's a good introduction and gives you a feel for, is this something that I would like doing? I haven't ever had any travelers that have gone somewhere and thought that they don't want to come back. And that's because of the type of travel that we're building for them, that they realize that there's so many different unique experiences that they can have. But if you're DIYing it yourself and things don't pan out the way that you envisioned it, or your hotel isn't as nice, or you couldn't figure out how to order a taxi, or you spent an exorbitant amount on a taxi that really scalped you getting from the airport to your hotel, or you had to wait in long lines to get into a certain attraction, you may not want to go back to that destination. You may be like, well, everything was so busy, or everything was so expensive, or I didn't feel like the food that we had was super authentic, and it was just, everybody was just pushing things in our faces, and I was worried about safety. So when you don't have somebody to prep you and set those expectations up, it's not that you're more destined to fail, because you can still have a great trip, but you're destined for a lot of other things not to meet your expectations.
Right. Well, and that's the whole reason why we would hire someone like you to be able to help us avoid all that risk.
You want to be able to enjoy the money that you're spending. And I tell my clients that I am here to protect your investment. Yeah. I cannot always guarantee that something I put in front of you is going to be the cheapest option. That is not what I'm here for. But I am here to make sure that the option is in front of you is the best option for you. Sometimes that means that it's a low-cost option.
Yeah.
But we look at variables other than costs. We're looking at cost. We're looking at fit. I have a client who is a very, very tall man. And they went to Paris back in October. And a lot of Parisian hotels are small, because Europeans are not small there in most countries, unless you're in Scandinavia, and they're really tall there. But if they booked the hotel that they were originally thinking, he would have been miserable, because the shower head would have been well below his head height. The bed would not have been long enough. So I researched and I found the option that fit for them, and they just kept raving about it. They're like, he could fit in the bed. He could fit in the shower. The bathroom isn't a water closet. It's amazing. And so things that a lot of people don't take into consideration. They're like, oh, well, a king bed is a king bed. I'm like, a king bed is not a king bed in every place. This is especially true in Japan, where a lot of rooms will have twin beds. But because the Japanese are so small, those 2 twin beds, they'll say, will fit 4 people. And they will not. And so I tell people,
if you don't know any better, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be like, okay, yeah, sure. It fits 4 people.
Yeah, sure. It fits 4 people. Yeah. And so you want to look for, those are, things that we just don't think about because we're spoiled here. And if you're not familiar with a destination or are on 100 different forums and Facebook and groups in Facebook to be able to look at all these things, you will not find out until you're there and then realize that you're like, okay, well, I made a grave mistake. So, and that's not the hotel's fault. That's not the country's fault. That's not, the staff's fault. That
you just didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know, and it's okay. And sometimes these are stories that you can laugh about. And then sometimes they're stories that can make a really big impact on how you experience that destination, how you feel about traveling. I don't ever want my clients to feel like anything is a waste of money, and they never have. I don't want my clients to feel like they could have spent less doing something else. They never have, because they realize that everything was hand-picked for them.
Yeah.
And you don't have to assume that level of service is going to be way above your tax bracket, because I can guarantee you in most cases it isn't. Really, it just comes down to your overall goal spend. So instead of saying budget, I'll be like, okay, how much do you ideally want to spend on this? And they'll say, well, all in with souvenirs, food, and those are variable expenses, we want to spend X amount. I'm like, okay, well, if we consider that 75% of that is probably going to be accommodations, travel, and pre-booked experiences, if this is what we can do in those numbers, or this cannot be done for this destination for how you're wanting to experience it. But here's another option. So I give people things to consider. It's never about turning anybody away or that they have to have a minimum spend. It's just saying, here is likely what is going to happen with that amount of money. I am here to protect the investment, whether you're spending $100,000 on travel or if you're spending $15,000 on travel. I'm here to protect it. I care about it the same. Here is what we can accomplish within those numbers.
Yeah. Didn't get the magazine at home? No problem. You can read it for free by signing up for our digital issues. Just head to the link in the show notes. And hey, if you're just listening to this episode, did you know you can watch it too? Catch the full video on YouTube, link below. And I love too that you have this app that clients use when they do, I was going to say go on vacation, when they can be on vacation, but it's a complete itinerary for everything that they're going to need, phone numbers. And I mean, the whole thing is all written out for them basically on their cell phones.
I create these electronic itineraries that can be printed because I have some clients that prefer paper, but it's a living document. And so I use it in my itinerary system, and it has an app that joins up to it. And what my clients really like, and it's different for them because there's really no other service where you're able to do this, they're able to watch me work in real time. So as we're booking hotels, as we're booking tours, as we're booking flights, as I'm writing their city guides, all of that appears in real time in that itinerary. So I don't say, hey, I'm logging on, you can watch me type, but it's not like a Google Doc, but they can see those things being added. And as we're approaching their actual travel date, I, of course, keep track of anything that's still lingering as far as a variable goes. But they're also able to see what's still left. What else do we need to do? And they can hold me accountable. I'm always going to get my work done by deadlines that I set forth with the clients. I'll be like, okay, we'll have this done by this date, whatever, and it's always done. But they can hold me accountable, and they can say, my travel advisor is working for me. I know what they're doing. I didn't just pay them to do this service, and I can see these charges on my bank statement for this supplier or that hotel or that tour, but I have nothing to show for it. They have everything right there. And the nice thing about that itinerary is that it holds all of their confirmations. It can hold whatever I put in there, but I pulled their confirmation emails. Usually I'll just save them as PDFs so that they have all that stuff in there. It'll have their tickets for things. It'll have everything, because that way, if something happens when you're checking in a hotel, usually doesn't, you have it right there. You'd be like, oh, let me look at this day because it's marked for this day, and I can find the confirmation email for check-in just to show them, and the hotel finds that, and it's great. You don't have to fish through your email. You don't have to have them tell you, oh, well, we overbooked and we get rid of the third-party bookings first. So we get rid of the hotels.com and the booking.com and everything because I'm not using those. So you have the safety and security of knowing, and everything is always double and triple confirmed. I call the transfers and make sure they're going to be where they say they are. I'll ask them, like, are you going to be wearing anything specific? So sometimes tour guides will be like, yeah, we have an orange hat on and we'll have a sign and everything, and we're going to meet in front of this cafe. I create daily maps for my clients that want them. So I'll create a Google map that has all their spots highlighted. And then, of course, they can decide what kind of transportation they're going to take. If they're prepared to take public transport or if they're going to use a taxi, I'll prepare them for how much a taxi from A to B location is going to cost so they don't get scalped and taken advantage of. I look ahead at all of these things because I'm well-traveled, but also because I care about you. And I don't want you to feel like, Alexa, we just paid $100 to go one way in a mile, and okay, that shouldn't have happened. You're prepared for every step and that you have quality products and quality experiences on your trip. And that itself is priceless. Of course, you have to pay for it, but it itself, in theory, is priceless.
And I love that you're reducing the risk because there's so much what ifs when you travel, right? I think maybe sometimes that's what holds people back. But having you on board as a partner can really help mitigate all of that.
I encourage my clients to learn a little bit. If they're going to a country that doesn't speak the same language, I encourage them to learn a couple of key phrases because that really does go a long way with the locals. The perception often of Americans is not always great in some other countries. And so if you go in there and you say, well, I'm a little bit different and I can give you a couple expressions in Italian and everything, they'll usually pick up that you're not Italian. So they will, speak to you in English if they know how to, or get somebody that does. The Italians are super hospitable. They love it if you say one word in Italian, they'll praise you forever for it. Same thing in Japanese. The Japanese are really proud of their culture and they like it when people want to learn theirs. I would say that is true about most countries. So I encourage you it's not that you shouldn't stick out. You are a tourist, whether you do it on your own or you do it with a travel advisor. You are a tourist by definition. But be an immersive tourist, be a respectful tourist, and understand that you are a visitor of somebody's home and you should treat it with respect. And by doing so, knowing, what they like and what isn't. One thing, for example, that I prep my clients on that they didn't really think about, because why would you? When you go to Japan, there are very few actual trash receptacles anywhere. So the Japanese, it's a very clean city, or Japan is a country, but Tokyo for itself, I'll reuse that example, is very, very clean. They will keep little small plastic bags, and then once they find a trash can, then they will dump all of their trash in that trash can, but they will accumulate all of their stuff and keep that on there. And that's very common. And they don't walk and eat. So if you're going through a street food district, people will stop and find a place and eat there and then go on. It is actually considered rude to walk and eat, but we do it all the time. You'll go through New York City and you'll see people eating pretzels, me, or you'll see people eating hot dogs or other street food. And it's just normal because we are always on the go and other countries don't feel that way.
But you can help prep people for that so they don't feel uncomfortable. Again, reducing the risk so that you can truly be on vacation versus going on vacation.
And you don't feel so lost and you don't feel overwhelmed and you don't feel like, oh, I wish I knew this beforehand.
Right.
Am I always going to cover everything? Sometimes no, because there'll be new situations even for me that'll come up. But looking ahead to make sure that I can cover as much as possible so that you do feel prepared and that you don't feel so out of place in a new place and that culture shock maybe isn't as insulting is really what I'm here for.
Yeah. And so really, I think the message for listeners is to dream big in 26.
Yeah.
Think about what is your dream vacation? Maybe it's not just sitting on a beach. You can make all those dreams happen.
Yeah.
And it's probably not outside of somebody's reach. They just need the right person to partner with. Mm-hmm. What are some hot spots that you're seeing now that are trending for travel, maybe for families as well as couples?
Japan, definitely. For almost anyone. Japan, depending on where you're at in Japan, can be, you look at it and you're like, okay, this is overwhelming. I don't know how trains work. I don't know. I want to take the bullet train. Everybody wants to do the bullet train in Japan. So you have to go somewhere that actually, the bullet train actually goes. Japan is incredibly popular. It's a very evergreen place to visit. So regardless of what time of year you visit, you're going to get a completely different experience, and it's beautiful, especially in the fall. All of the foliage and everything in Japan is incredibly impressive. Okinawa has really great beaches. It's really just, everything is fabulous, but it does get very cold in Japan because it is on the water. Portugal is another one that is incredibly popular with families. It's a very, very, very family-friendly destination. Everything is made with families in mind. I also find this too with Sweden. Sweden is very forward in that way. Sweden isn't super popular, but it is also another really great family-friendly destination. And other countries are starting to pick up on younger families or large families heading to these destinations. And of course, they want their tourism to boom more. So if they can try to do things to accommodate these families, they will. So we're seeing that more in other countries across Europe, South America, that they're trying to find ways, because a lot of countries in South America are still considered technically developing countries. And so these places are trying to get into the tourism industry, and they're trying to accommodate as many people as they can. Australia, really anything in the South Pacific is incredibly family friendly and also evergreen to a degree.
And you mentioned Hawaii as well.
Yeah, domestically, Hawaii is one of those places where the weather is perfect year round. It can be a long flight to get there, but I encourage you to spend time. What really entices people about traveling to Hawaii is island hopping, and you can. But we set aside time. So it's not like 2 days on Oahu, 2 days on Maui, 2 days on Kauai. Like, you are spending time, you are doing the things. And the locals love travelers and receiving visitors to their home that want to appreciate and respect the Hawaiian culture. Okay. And so domestically, that's always a fabulous location. Even going to, in the wintertime, going to Quebec in Canada, it's a Hallmark town and in the winter. And that's just north. So if you have a passport, you can head up that way. There are a lot of great places, and domestic travel should never be written off. So I talk about, other countries because most of my clients really want to travel internationally. But even traveling our own country's huge and has a lot to offer. We can find excellent experiences that make great weekend trips if you're not ready to commit to a week long in some destination. Different ways to experience it. You can experience the U.S. by rail that isn't Amtrak, so doing that with Rocky Mountaineer, which I recently did in Denver and Utah. And you can experience different hiking opportunities, of course, skiing, snowboarding, that sort of thing over there in the mountain region. But there are a number of different ways. There are even cruises of just like the Northeast. There are river cruises in the U.S. So being able to find a way. So all of these really exciting concepts of travel that people have, you don't need to travel very far to experience them. Yeah. They're right here.
Yeah. I have the itch. So now I'm like trying to plan. We got to plan a vacation for 26. Where can people get more information about you?
So you can head to my website. My website is The Maison Voyage, TheMaisonVoyage.com. That is my website. On there is a button to request a consultation. So if you want to have a meeting with me and discuss those big dreams that you have for 2026, you can do that and schedule that. My email is on there as well as my phone number. And I am very reachable. My clients will tell you that. They will tell you that anything that they need, I'm available on text. This is the longest I've gone without ever checking my phone. So I probably have, I always have accessibility because I want you to feel like you are able to reach the person that you want to work with to plan your trip.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alexa. Please check the show notes because we do have some links, and Alexa has some amazing travel galleries on her site as well. So if you're looking at very specific destinations like Japan, she has all of that in there. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I hope we've inspired you to plan a fantastic trip for 26, and we will see you next week on Inside Northwest Columbus.
Boxland Media. Think big.